Welcome to Season 2 of the Face to Face Ministries podcast. I am Melinda Wilson.
And I'm Kathy Little. Thank you so much for joining us as we introduce you to ministries and leaders from around the globe who have said yes to the Isaiah 61 mandate to heal the brokenhearted and set the captives free, helping people to step into who they were always meant to be.
And for more information about us, please visit our website, face2faceministries.org. That's all one word, no spaces, no numbers, and no caps. And please follow us on our social media platforms, face2faceministries.org on Facebook, and on Instagram, face2facemin.
Welcome to today's episode. We are so happy you're here. Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 78. Man, we're excited to have you here. And you know, there's a lot of stuff going on in the face-to-face ministries world these days. And we're meeting a lot of new people. We're running some online trainings, and we're building community in the face-to-face heart healing network. And we're just really excited about the people that we're meeting and the people that God is bringing to us. We've got people who are brand new to heart healing. They've never heard of it before. They don't know, but they're like drawn to it. And then we have other people who have been trained in ministry actively for many, many years. And every now and then, again, God just is highlighting some voices that I think he wants heard. And so we've got a really special guest today that kind of came to us through community in the Face-to-Face Heart Healing Network. So Melinda, why don't you share a little bit about where this interview came from?
Yeah, I actually in the network, in this community that we're building, we just encourage people to introduce themselves. We encourage people to tell about, their experience with heart healing. Maybe they haven't had any, maybe they've had years of training, where they're from, what they're doing now. And I got a message from Brad Simpson, who I had never heard of before, but you have the privilege to hear from today. And first of all, it's unique to have men in heart healing. And what I found just even over the years, there's not very many men. There seems to be the ratio is higher for women. And so to hear from him was like, all right, another guy. And he just seemed to have a tender heart. And from the bit that he described himself as a heart sync minister. But what really got me intrigued is the dream that he has. And I'm going to let him share that to incorporate heart healing with something else. But I'm really honored to introduce Brad Simpson to you guys, coming to us from Colorado. And so Brad, welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So we're just going to dive right in, Brad. Tell us just about your experience with heart healing. And you can go as far back as you want to childhood or, well, I don't know, in the womb. But, just share with us how you got involved with heart healing and what that has been looking like for you.
Yeah, well, that's a pretty broad question. Honestly, I can trace it back to about 1997. In fact, it was exactly 1997. I received a word that was very out of the blue and very direct about becoming a heart healer. And at that time, I just didn't have a grid for it. I didn't know what to do with that. But, like Mary, just tucked things away in her heart for later. That's what I did. I wrote it down and tucked it away. And it wasn't until 2006 when I was having some difficult things going on around me, where I really needed to bring some healing to the table, for others that were wrestling, suicide attempt, that sort of thing. And I didn't have it. It wasn't there. And I thought to myself, wow, this is not okay. I'm a follower of the King of Kings. I know the wonderful counselor. I should have something. And it was probably within a week that I was actually invited out of the blue to my first Family Foundation seminar. And Family Foundations, they're a group out of Littleton, Colorado. And what I watched in this seminar was literally people's hearts being healed in front of my eyes. And I thought to myself a couple things. One is I thought, wow, this is possible. this can actually happen, because I'd never seen it before. And the other thing that happened was that word came back to me like a flood. And I thought to myself, Bradley, you were built to do this. This is what you were made for. And so my wife and I, we attended all of the different seminars that Family Foundations offered. Blessing Generations, Ancient Paths, Overcoming Anger, just all kinds of different seminars. And then we were trained as facilitators and began to do that, and then continued to move on and were trained as coordinators where, we could take on other facilitators and see them raised up. And in the midst of that, just was so overjoyed to be able to be with people's hearts in that way. So that was kind of the start of the journey. And we were with Family Foundations for about 10 years and just got a lot of good, reps, with people's hearts, just being with a lot of folks and watching Jesus do what he does, and really gaining confidence in God's goodness. At first it's like you show up to a seminar and we're having these breakout groups with 6 to 8 people, and you feel like all eyes are on you. And it's like, oh God, you got to show up or it's going to be really bad.
Yeah.
And then he would show up and I was like, oh man, that was lucky,
Yeah.
And then I do it again. I'm like, oh God. And he just kept showing up. And after a while, it's like, wait a minute. I'll bet he's going to show up whenever we do, And he does. It's like, if we'll show up, he's raring to go. He's prepared his heart to be with these precious people. And we just got to witness that year after year. And the seminar format was amazing. I'd love to chat a little bit, maybe a little later on, about what Family Foundations does. But the thing that really, that my heart desired was to be face to face with these precious ones. And so what I did, I got involved with the healing ministry at my church. And we call that SMASH, which is kind of goofy: Spirit, Mind, and Soul Healing.
Oh, that's awesome.
Because everyone needs a good acronym, right? So, and that was week after week being, a facilitator and an intercessor with a recipient, and just getting some really good time with people's hearts and diving deeper. And, along with that, just growing in confidence in Jesus's goodness, and the Father's heart for these people. And it's almost like, I don't know, it's probably the greatest joy in my life. One of two, which I'll probably share a little bit about later. But one thing was really intriguing me, and that was that I was seeming to have these conversations with different aspects of the heart. And I hadn't been trained to do that. It was just coming about. It was just happening. And these different aspects of the heart were actually responding to me. And I just didn't have a grid for that, but it was fairly consistent. And emotion was one of those dynamics that I could pretty easily enter into conversation with. Another part I didn't even know was part of the heart, but I kept bumping into this barrier or wall or resistance or something. I didn't know what it was, but you'd feel like, we're really getting somewhere. This is great. We're heading towards a great breakthrough. And then all of a sudden just, it just stops. And you've probably experienced that as well. I think anyone who does, the healing ministry has seen that. And I was just chewing on, what is this? Is this human? Is this demonic? Is this, whatever I'm encountering, does it have a will? Can it make decisions? I don't know. So I was seeing this happen, and then somebody actually introduced me to some of the HeartSync principles at a real high level. And I can remember, like it was yesterday, sitting at lunch talking to our pastor as he described this. And it was like time stood still, because what he was describing is what I was seeing with people's hearts. It's like, that's it. You've given me, this, you've visualized the invisible, what I'm seeing in these people's hearts. And, he talked about the possibility of releasing trauma, which is amazing. I mean, the gospel really is good news. It's not just, the 4 spiritual laws and then wait for heaven. It's like we actually can have our burdens lifted, and the thought that Jesus would do that really for people was so good. And I guess it was, I don't know, about 2 months later, Father Andrew actually came to Denver. And if you want to be introduced to Father Andrew, I think you'll have to do episode 41 and 42.
He knows it.
He knows
little,
it. Yeah.
little commercial advertisement there.
Yes. We did interview him. Yeah.
So, Father Andrew's here just given me things that I'd been desiring for a long time. I felt like he gave me probably one of the best gifts a human could give me on earth. And so it wasn't long after that I entered into a training process along with a number of other folks from Colorado, and, moving through qualification and pretty close to certification at this point. And it's just been such a good journey.
So it sounds like Father Andrew gave you language for what you were already sort of coming to face with already with ministering to people. You just didn't have language for it. You didn't have the language of guardian. And for people who don't know, HeartSync is inner healing model that deals with the aspect that there's 4 core parts of our heart, and that's true self, guardian, emotion, and function. And they all have roles, and it doesn't mean that we're different personalities. It's just different aspects of the heart. And so, Brad, it sounds like Father Andrew really gave you language for what you were picking up on. I mean, it sounds like you were really insightful in ministering to people and recognizing that these were different, and even asking the question, is this human? Is it their will? Instead of maybe bowling through and just go, in Jesus' name, where sometimes that could be a temptation. Sometimes that's all we know how to do, but it's actually a part of someone's heart. As you learned HeartSync, how did that expand you in what you were doing in inner healing ministry?
Yeah. So, I mean, you're right. He did give me language. And that was really valuable. Even more so, what I received from Father Andrew, part of it was a teaching about kind of the architecture of our hearts, how we're built, and how those different parts interact with each other. But I think really what I received more so from Father Andrew was a vision of what it looks like to actually interact with the heart in a healing way, to see the deep places of the heart. Sometimes the lonely places and the parts that haven't been seen. Mm-hmm. The parts that are angry sometimes, often, sometimes scared. A lot of times worn out, just tired. And to be able to enter into not just dialogue, but in a sense, relationship with those different aspects of the heart, and Kathy, I think it was your podcast that, you had mentioned being seen. And that's such a treat to be able to see those parts, because function's often very vocal, very active, very used to interacting, but then there's these poor other parts that are carrying all this trauma, or, trying to push this rock uphill, and it just feels like it's never going to end, and to be able to engage those aspects of the heart and bring them into contact with Jesus, in a really transformational way. They talk about corrective experiences, as guardians and emotion and these different aspects of the heart come into contact with the Lord and just have this corrective experience. It's like, wow, things can really be different now. And watching Father Andrew do that, in these demonstrations, was just so eye-opening. Mm. It was like oxygen hit my spirit. And then, of course, I stepped out and tried to be a little mini Father Andrew. It's like, what would Father Andrew say? And, which is great because that's how kids learn. We imitate. But then it started to become my own, And when Father Andrew talked about how much he loved to interact with guardians, it's like, I get it. It's one of the best things in life for me, is meeting these precious parts. So
what are you currently doing, Brad? Are you in regular heart healing ministry right now, or?
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting question. I'm actually in aerospace. I pay the bills with. I kind of support my ministry habit, honestly, in the aerospace industry, and so that's my day job. And then quite often, evenings throughout the week, it's either training others on the SMASH team or ministering HeartSync. And then I've started my own counseling endeavor. I call that Heart and Soul Adventures. And typically on Saturdays, I'm seeing, a number of folks. So
tell us about that.
Yeah, that's intriguing. That's adventures. Yeah.
Well, that word that I'd received in 1997, I had been alone with God, apparently, or, I felt like I was just by myself, taking a walk on a Sunday night. And I was preparing with my wife, we were preparing to go to Siberia to work on aircraft in support of an aviation ministry, basically, transporting missionaries and supplies and that sort of thing. And it wasn't going very well. And I was kind of struggling with it. And I told God, I held my hands up to the sky and I said, God, these are not mechanics' hands. I don't know what we're doing here, but would you please, I don't know, get us out of here. Can't remember exactly what I said. But the next day, after another kind of hard day of working on airplanes, our church was having a revival service. And I remember just not feeling like I want to go, like I wanted to just be grumpy and go to bed. But instead, something told me I really needed to go to this. And I head to this service, and the preacher, I can't really remember anything he said at the end, except at the end he said, the altars are open, come on down if you'd like to pray. And I thought, that's a good idea. So I made my way to the far corner of the altar because I didn't want anyone messing with me, touching me. I just wanted to grump on God. And I suppose I was doing that. And I feel this tap on my shoulder. And I turn around and there's a lady looking at me with these kind of crazy, wild, prophetic eyes. And she said, hold out your hands. And I held them out. And she took some oil and she anointed them and she pointed at me. And she said, God wants you to know these are mechanics' hands. But they're also hands that will heal broken hearts and souls with God's tools of the Holy Spirit.
Wow. So
when I was thinking about, all right, what should I name a counseling endeavor? Heart and Soul had to be in it. And then, Melinda, you mentioned True Self. or original self, different names. But part of my true self is certainly connected with seeing hearts made whole. But part of my true self is very much connected to rivers, and specifically, being on moving water, whether it's, raft, kayak, canoe, tubes, paddleboard, anything or floating, down the river just by myself, whatever it is. There's something about that just feels connected to a really deep part of me. So I had to tack on adventures to that name, and it became Heart and Soul Adventures.
So what does it look like to combine heart healing with river rafting?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. What I found is that when I get on rivers with people, a lot of the barriers that they might have, in their normal setting, in their normal habitat, tend to start to drop. And I find that the deep places of the heart are much more accessible. And so far, I haven't been able to do that formally, having a day job, but I've done a fair amount of inner healing ministry on the river, and just, it seems like you don't have to work as hard, and sometimes it's been around the campfire, other times it's been in the raft as we're drifting down the river, past the canyon walls. Sometimes it's right next to somebody kind of bumping canoes together. And, especially if someone's just flipped their canoe and or they're feeling pretty down on themselves, it seems like that's a great opportunity to see Jesus and minister to those really deep places.
We've actually talked, many people have heard us mentioning the Dash Away weekends that we do for ladies. And we've actually had guys ask us, hey, when are you going to do something like this for men? And so we actually do have a guy on our team. His name is Robert. You may have seen him in the Face-to-Face network, but we've had conversations about what it would look like for guys to get together and do a Dash Away experience. And it has to look different because men and women connect in different ways to things. And so we've kicked around the ideas of what does that look like. And so what you're doing is connecting those informal conversations around a goal, a task, an adventure, something specific, so that there's something that the guys can focus on. But then in that, you're building relationship and having those heart-to-heart conversations. And so that's another reason we're really intrigued with what you're doing, because that's something that we're trying to explore, how to expand and do that type of thing where guys have an opportunity to encounter Jesus in a profound, life-changing way, but in a way that they understand and can really connect to, which is going to be different than a female.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, that's another aspect of outdoor adventure that I'm really looking forward to, when I'm able to enter into that. One of the things that Family Foundations does well is they have a very strong awareness of how important certain times of blessing are in our lives and how that really empowers us to prosper. And one of those is the coming of age type experience, which, if you're a Hebrew, you're going to have around the age of 13, a bat mitzvah or a bar mitzvah. And you watch these young people as they come into adulthood, and they just thrive because they know, I'm not a kid anymore. And we've got grown-ups, 40, 50, 60, 70 years old that are still kids in men's bodies. Mm-hmm. So what does that look like to have these adventures that, we actually learn what it looks like to be a man of honor, and get released into that no matter what age, and really come back a different person.
Yeah, I would imagine those adventures will, especially with the adrenaline and people being afraid of it until they do it, and then they realize how much fun they have, and that shift. I'm sure you see that shift because you would be exposed to people who like, this is the first time I've ever done this, and then they're like, oh man, where has this been my whole life? This is awesome.
Yeah.
And so there is like that level of confidence and just a sense of accomplishment.
Yeah.
I would imagine that those would be really powerful parts of the whole adventure thing.
Well, they are very powerful. And another really, I don't know if I'd say powerful, but a tremendous benefit of being in an experience like that is what Jim Wilder has tapped into, and Michael Sullivan, in terms of the joy and the rest cycles and being together. You have these intense experiences, and then you rest together around the campfire and you tell stories, and they're just really healthy rhythms for the heart.
Yeah, and it's very bonding.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
It creates those healthy bonds. And I think too, just knowing that most of our clientele are women, and the conversations I've had enough with men and women that it's females that are going to be much more likely to come and sit down face to face or, virtually like this than men but men, I think I don't know, cause I'm not one, but that you guys are more designed to bond around and something to do together rather than just sit and talk, women, we could sit and have a 3-hour conversation just over one cup of coffee and just sit in one place for 3 hours. Whereas it seems like, and I'm sure some guy, I don't want to make a sweeping generalization, but the way that men really bond is doing something together. And so it would seem even more effective, at least to some, okay, I'm not asking you to come and sit across from a desk from me or, sit together in an office with me for 2 hours and let's do this intense heart healing session. I can imagine maybe you can help me understand, a guy would be much more prone to come along on a river raft, adventure than come and sit with me for 2 hours in an office.
Oh, very much so. Absolutely. I think you mentioned it. It's like you've got instant community, and for a guy to be able to chop wood, set up camp, do the activities with other men is really powerful. And it seems to just really open the heart. And those conversations come at, interesting times, but there is a bunch of time to have those.
Yeah.
I look forward to when you're able to launch that. And I'm sure that, guys listening are like, yeah, let me know. And I mean, of course we do have guys as clients that come and are very open-hearted and share, but just from the way, God made us different, and that's okay. And that's good that he made women different than men, and the way that we connect, the way that we bond, what we like,
Sure.
and how we, even our healing process. And so I feel like, God's definitely on what you're doing, Brad, and just even your experience. And you had talked somewhat about family foundations, and I had never heard of that until you had mentioned that. So why don't you just spend a little bit of time sharing about what Family Foundations is?
Yeah. So Craig and Jan Hill are the founders, and they started as pastors, and they had been counseling a number of different folks, and they found that what they were doing in counseling was very similar. They were seeing the same problems over and over, and kind of working through the same thing pretty consistently. So they decided to step out in a ministry, which they called Family Foundations. And the ministry was kind of, it's centered around seminars that really what they were trying to do is two things. Their primary vision is to teach the church how to walk in a culture of blessing. And the Hebrews understood this. They had 7 different times of blessing that, if if you were in that culture, you were almost guaranteed to experience, most of those, if not all of them. And in our Western culture, we're probably likely to experience maybe one of those times of blessing, if that. So there's all kinds of damage to the heart that, needs to be healed. So part of the seminars is seeing, that restoration. And then part of it is really teaching, how do you, as a family, as a church, as a culture, how do we actually walk out a, culture of blessing? And some of that would look like coming of age ceremonies. Some of it would look like, rising up in old age, or, blessing our parents as they come into old age. That's something that is very, very much in the Hebrew culture. And, we've lost some of that. Blessing surrounding the name, the naming of a child, and essentially assigning a job description. There's a whole series of things that Craig and Jan go into. And as churches start to catch on to that, there's not as much repair of damage, because people are empowered right from the start just to thrive. And that's really what Craig wants to see, and what he and Jan are working towards.
Wow.
Where are they based?
They're based out of Littleton, Colorado.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Family Foundations International would be their website.
So, Brad, do you have any information out and available yet on the things that you're building, or are we still in a holding pattern as those things get fixed and ready to launch? Because I know, we launch things and they're like hidden for a while until we're ready to go. But is there some place for people to find out more about you, or they can certainly connect with you in the Face-to-Face Heart Healing Network? You're there, and people could connect with you there. But where else could they find you?
Yeah. Well, a friend of mine's going to be laughing right now. My website is right now a Wix, pile of wires. I tend to keep a lot in my head. And honestly, what I'm looking for is people that I can partner with. I don't know if you two do the Enneagram, but I'm a quintessential 9.
Oh dear. Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So
no, you're awesome.
So I can think about things for an awfully long time. And honestly, I really need to partner up with some folks that are good at getting things done. So,
you never know. You might be exposed to a few.
Well,
yeah.
I hope so.
Listening.
I hope so. I can be reached at brad@heartandsouladventures.com. That's my email address. And I'll respond to those pretty quickly. And, otherwise you're kind of hearing the vision right now. So,
well, something might be being birthed right now. You never know.
That's
and
true.
we're happy to give you a platform to just share your heart and what you're doing. We are trying to incorporate a bit of a series within our podcast series called Real People, Real Stories. And you are a real person with a real story and a real dream, and you're moving toward that. And so hopefully we can be a connection point for people that want to maybe partner with you and connect with you. And I think what you're aiming toward is a really important piece of a very big pie that needs to happen. And not that you'd be the only person on the planet that does exactly what you do, but there's plenty to go around. The need is great. And so for you to be cultivating and growing and dreaming with God of your individual expression of what that looks like. And with the training that you're already bringing into this with HeartSync and all the other training that you've had, I think it's a really fantastic and brilliant way to help men in particular connect and have that heart experience with Jesus. So thank you for saying yes to that.
Yeah,
thank you for wrestling with that and dreaming that through and for being willing to share with us your dream, your desires, and your plans, and kind of letting us into your process. We really appreciate that. And I'm really glad that you took the time to just share that with us and with our audience. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's one other thing that's kind of rattling around my head. You had talked about men in ministry, and I really appreciate your call out to men. And there's a really specific reason for that. At one point in my life, I had a friend who he was doing auto repair type stuff. If someone was in a crash and the car was banged up, he would restore it to as close to original as he could. And just out of the blue, he said something to me that stuck with me for most of my life since then. He said, when a car gets in a crash, you can't just hook up to it and yank on it and make it straight again. He goes, the damage has to come out opposite the way it went in. You have to be very careful how that damage comes out. And, you had talked about men ministering to men, but what I've seen is that very often the brokenness that women take on is because of men. We're responsible for wreaking havoc in women's lives. And there is something that a man who looks very much like Jesus, who's gentle and patient and kind and can, be with somebody in a very life-giving way, that can actually remove a lot of that damage, where it's like somebody can track straight again. It's not like they're always going to be drifting to the left or whatever that looks like. So even that aspect, I just echo that call out to men to rise up in ministry, and especially healing ministry.
Well, and you're right, Brad, because we have had, in the past, just people saying, well, I really prefer a man or I really prefer a woman. Obviously, it's mostly women that have said, I really prefer a woman because of what you just said. But if we can, maybe they need, if they've really been damaged by men, then we, the corporate, we can get them to a place of healing enough that then they feel comfortable with a man. And that would be healing, like, oh my gosh, there's actually good men. There's actually Christ-like men.
And obviously in the context of team, we would never want that to be a one-on-one situation, but in the context of team, that's so important to work together and to have that and to create a safe place for the damage to be undone. And that's why we say, so it's such a big thread in healing circles that healing happens in community and healing happens in the context of relationship. Why? Because most of our damage is caused by relationships. And so having healthy relationships to reverse that, that's a really good key point that you just made, that there is a lot of damage, a lot of women who've been wounded by men. And so having the guys step into who they're created to be and to carry the heart of the Father and Jesus and the presence of God with them in a way that can bring healing in the context of a team ministry situation, that's fantastic. Needs to happen. Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up. That's good.
Yeah. Well, Brad, thank you so much. And, I look forward to, I don't know if it's 6 months or a year or 2 years down the track. I don't think it'll be 2 years. I think it'll be less than that. I'm not saying I'm giving you a word of prophecy, but I do feel like that if anyone out there's listening, anyone out there all over the planet, the universe, that this something is just like, that's interesting. Even if you don't have a full-blown vision yet, like Brad does, but something is resonating in you, get in touch with him and just reach out. And I just really feel like, Brad, this is going to be sooner than you think. And, the vision is there. You've had the confirmation and the need is now, and it's like the need is great and the need is now. And I haven't heard of anything like it. I think it's phenomenal. I love it. And whatever we can do to help get that out there and promote it and share it, we will. And so I just say, Lord, fan the flame that you've put in Brad and this vision and this passion and the tender heart to care for people and bring healing, that you would just bring that into fruition, the dream that you put in his heart, and bring around him the people that's going to be the perfect core team that are just going to make this awesome thing explode and bring healing to a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's going to be exciting. I'm excited. I want to go. I love nature and outdoor stuff. So
we are not experts in everything. We are the connectors of the people who are. And so if we can be a connection point or link arms with you in some way, it really is, you're really carrying the heart of what we're about too, in that face-to-face encounter, that connection, community, resourcing and connecting. That's what that's all about. And obviously to our listeners, the Face-to-Face Heart Healing Network is about that. It's a community of a place where you can connect with people like Brad, and you will have resources in there and different options for training and mentoring and there's a whole bunch of stuff that we're rolling out. It just takes a little time to get it all done. As you know, it's like
it takes a team.
It takes a village,
families.
It takes a village. But thanks for listening today, you guys. Thanks, Brad, for being part of this. And we really are excited about what God has in store for you, and really glad that he brought you to cross paths with us, and that you are sharing your vision and getting it out there. And we'll see what God does. I know it's going to be amazing because he's wanting to heal us. I mean, there's something exponential about that he's really accelerating that because the need is so great and the time is now.
Sweet. Yeah. Thank you, Brad, so much. It's really a pleasure. And I'm so excited and glad that you're part of the network.
Yeah.
Look forward to connecting with you more.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for listening to the Face-to-Face Ministries podcast. And to be sure not to miss any future episodes, please subscribe.
And to help us get the word out, please share this podcast with your friends. Give us a 5-star rating and leave us a brief review. More content is coming your way.
Thank you so much for listening.